Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the council meeting of the Central Goldfields Shire Council, the 25th of August 2020. I welcome my fellow administrators, Karen Douglas and Hugh Delahunty, general managers, and a very good evening to all listeners who may have joined us this evening. Special welcome to our Acting General Manager of Corporate Performance, David Anderson, who's joined us this evening following the retirement of Paul Brumby. So welcome, David. It's great to have you on board this evening. We don't actually have a finance report. It's so early in the financial year, so you've got a light one this evening, but it's great to have you on board. As tradition, we'll commence with the acknowledgement of country. At the commencement of each regular council meeting, we acknowledge that we meet on the Djadja country. But tonight we have participants in a number of different areas located on traditional lands of the Djadja, the Tunarung, Jawajali and the Jabberung peoples. If you're watching from home tonight, you may well also be located on other traditional lands. So tonight we acknowledge the traditional owners right across the country. We pay our respects to our leaders past, present and emerging, and recognise that they hold the memories, traditions, cultures and hopes of all Indigenous peoples. Our hope tonight is that we might walk together in harmony in a spirit of healing and cooperation. I'm going to open with the council prayer. Almighty God, we ask your blessing upon this council, direct and our deliberations this evening, and may our decisions be in the interest of the true welfare of the people of the Central Goldfields Shire Council. Amen. Okay, I will read a formal statement regarding our use of remote technology this evening. Recent amendments to the Local Government Act enable remote meetings to be held in this way, and this enables council to continue to meet and conduct business safely during the current pandemic restrictions. Consistent with the guidelines provided by the Victorian State Government, we are live streaming tonight's council meeting using a system that complies with the Victorian Government's advice on minimising risk to cyber security. We will operate tonight with revised meeting procedures that are consistent with the intent of our local law that governs the way council meets and conducts its business. These procedures were adopted at our meeting on the 26th of May and are available on council's website. As administrators, we are all able to see and hear each other, and our community is able to hear and see the meeting. If technical problems are encountered which disrupt the conduct of the meeting, or if any of our administrators are not able to fully participate, the meeting will be adjourned until the technical issues can be resolved, or reschedule the meeting to a future date if they can't be resolved. If the chair drops out, then Administrator Karen Douglas will become the chair. If two or all administrators drop out, the meeting will automatically be adjourned, or adjourned by the remaining administrator for up to half an hour. And if the problem can't be fixed, the remaining items will be held over until the next ordinary meeting or another meeting called for that purpose. This evening, our meeting is being handled and organised by our Manager of Governance, Property and Risk. And I want to say thank you to Megan for her work in that area. So far, this is our third or fourth meeting like this, and they've all run very, very smoothly. Fourth, yes, the fourth meeting. So fingers crossed and hope for the best, and that we can get through the meeting unscathed as we have in the past. So let's move on to the items on our agenda this evening. For anybody who's watching our meeting from elsewhere, you have been hopefully able to see a copy of the agenda. Agendas are available on council's website if you want to follow them. So I encourage you to go onto the website and you can access a copy of the agenda that we are following here this evening, and all the attachments that are connected with the meeting. So the first item on our agenda is apologies, and we are all present, so there are none. There are no leave of absence. Does anybody have any conflict of interest they need to disclose?
No.
No, there's no conflict of interest to declare. So we'll move on to item number 5 on our agenda, which is the confirmation of the minutes of previous council meeting. And this is on page 2 of the council agenda.
Mr. Chair, I would like to move that council confirms the minutes of the council meetings held on the 28th of July 2020 and the 11th of August 2020.
Okay, it's been moved. Does it have a second then, Mrs. Douglas?
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and second. Anybody want to make any comments at all? No, I'm going to put it to vote. Those in favour, against, that's carried. Okay, moving on now to item 6 on the agenda this evening, which is the noting of the approved minutes of special committee meetings and of advisory committee meetings. I've explained in the past, sometimes these seem like a long way in the past, but they don't come to council until they've actually been to 2 meetings and been received by the appropriate committee. So sometimes if they only meet quarterly, it can be up to 6 months before we actually get to see these meetings. But the report is there presented to you on page 4, and the recommendation is on page 5 of the agenda this evening.
And I will move the recommendation that council notes the confirmed minutes of the Denali Historic Precinct Committee meeting 22nd of June 2020.
Thank you very much. Have a seconder.
Happy to second that, Mr. Chairman.
Has been moved and seconded. I'm going to put it to the vote. Those in favour?
Yes.
Against? That's carried. Thank you. There are item number 7, which is petitions, and we do not have any petitions to deal with this evening. So we'll move now on to the substantive matters of this evening's meeting, which is the officer report. So the first one is 8.1 on page 6 of your agenda, the Assembly of Councillors.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move that council note the record of assemblies of councillors for the period the 18th of July 2020 to the 17th of August 2020.
Okay, it has been moved. To be seconded, Mrs. Douglas.
Yes.
It has been moved and seconded. The Assembly of Council's recommendation there. So I'm going to put it to the vote. Those in favour?
Yes.
Against?
Yes.
Say yes. That's a belated yes, but yes, it's carried. Thank you. I thought I was going to have a casting vote there for a minute. Okay, moving on to item number 2, an important item in our agenda this evening. This is the amendment of the consideration of the Denali and Carisbrook flood studies, which have been underway now for quite some time. The recommendation of this item is on page 17 of the agenda this evening.
The recommendation is, and I'll move, that Council 1, in response to the submissions to the exhibited amendment CO31GOL, make a minor change to the amendment mapping by reducing the area covered by the LSIO02 as requested in submission 5, as documented in attachment 2 in the agenda, and 2, refer unresolved submissions to amendment CO31GOL to an independent planning panel for consideration.
Okay, just make sure I've got the right page here. Thank you very much. Now have a second of that, Mr. Delahunty. Just seconding that. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Now, do you wish to speak to this one, Mrs. Douglas?
I would like to just make a few comments, please. And the first really is that amending the planning scheme to address flood risk for the townships of both Carisbrook and Denali has been recognised as a high priority in the North Central Regional Flood Plan Management Strategy of 2018-2028. The CMA then sought and has received funding to assist the Shire to engage an appropriate resource to work on flood-related planning scheme amendments. Section 8A2 of the Act stipulates that a municipal council may only prepare an amendment to the planning scheme if it is authorised to do so by the Minister for Planning, and this authorisation was granted in February of this year. Planning a scheme amendment CO31CGOL proposes to implement the findings of the Denali flood investigation of 2014 and the Carisbrook flood and drainage management plan of 2013. Until now, Council has had to rely on pretty much outdated and fairly sketchy information to support planning decisions in these townships, and this amendment will ensure that future development is designed to manage flooding in a much safer way. The amendment proposes to amend the planning scheme by applying 2 overlays: land subject to inundation, an overlay for that term LSIO. This applies to land affected by flooding associated with waterways and open drainage systems. And the second overlay will be the floodway, which is FO, which is being applied to lands that are subject to the highest flood risk and where floods occur most frequently. The amendment was exhibited in accordance with the requirements of the Act and also with the restrictions required by the COVID-19 pandemic, of course. Council received 12 submissions, 5 from the referring authorities, 5 submissions from landowners, which were referred to the CMA, and 2 that were withdrawn. While a minor change to the amendment is warranted in response to one submission, which refers to a property in Denali, which is as a result of the recent flood mitigation works undertaken there quite recently, is now deemed not to be likely to be affected. Both Council and the North Central CMA do not regard the other requested changes as justified, and adopting all of them would diminish the effect of the amendment and undermine its overall strategic justification. A repeated concern related to the timing of this amendment in light of the proposed flood mitigation works to be undertaken in Carisbrook, which, as most people would realise, has not been completed yet as yet. Unfortunately, these final stages of the works, because they've not been completed and the amendment is funded to progress immediately, it can only deal with what is the existing situation. However, when this final stage of the mitigation works is completed, a subsequent assessment can be made and changes can be made to the planning controls. I support this motion. It's a very important step forward for the townships of Carisbrook and Denali, and it's certainly going to make a lot of work easier for the planners, but it will need now to go to an independent planning panel to be appointed by the Minister for Planning. So the motion, I think you'll read out, but I did want to fill in a little bit of the background, and of course, we are very pleased that this is going ahead, hopefully.
Thank you very much. Mr. Delahunty, do you wish to say something?
No, not tonight.
Okay. I will just sort of conclude the comments of Mrs. Douglas there. This has been a long time coming. When we consider the last major flood was nearly 10 years ago, it is quite an amazing that we have not been able to have this mapping done up until now. So I acknowledge the work of the CMA and DELP and the state government in funding this piece of work. It is a very, very important piece of work. The next step in providing some certainty for the residents and property owners in Carisbrook. And so it is if you anybody, members of the public who are there, who are reading this report, you will see it is a very extensive piece of work that has been undertaken by our team and our planners, and I commend them for their work and thank the CMA for the support that they've given us in driving this one forward. It's a very, very important step, and I'm absolutely delighted that we are able to complete this next step in terms of providing certainty for the ratepayers in Carisbrook. So the motion is that Council, in response to the submissions of the exhibited amendment CO31 GOL, make a minor change to the amendment mapping by reducing the area covered by the LSI 02 as requested in submission 5, as documented in attachment 2 to this evening's agenda, and 2, unresolved submissions, refer unresolved submissions to amendment CO31 GOL to the independent planning panel for consideration. I'm going to put that to the vote. Those in favour say aye.
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 Against, that is carried. Thank you very much for that. Okay, so we're now moving on to item 8.2, sorry, 8.3. Yes, the planning application for a 5-lot subdivision and removal, lopping or destruction of native vegetation at 25 Margaret Avenue. This is on page 18 of tonight's agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move the recommendation with the 56 conditions which are outlined from page 40 through to 47 on the agenda tonight.
I'm very pleased that you've done it that way, Mr. Delahunty. I was expecting you might read out the several pages, but I'm very, very pleased, and I'm sure the any members of the public who are watching are most relieved that you're not reading out all the items, conditions attached to this particular planning application. So it's been moved, and the recommendation is on page 40 of on page 40 of the agenda this evening. And do I have a seconder, please, Mrs. Douglas?
You have a seconder.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Mr. Delhunty, do you wish to say anything to this?
Just a few words, Mr. Chairman. Look, this planning application proposes the 5-lot subdivision. It was lodged back last year. I know there's been a lot of discussion between the applicant and also the council. The proposed lots on this subdivision range from over 600 square metres to nearly 1,500 square metres. So some of them are fairly large lots, but we need to recognise the fact that there is, as such, a cultural heritage management plan is not required for this and where it is located. But as you said in the introduction, the subject site fronts Margaret Avenue in Maryborough. The other thing I want to say is that there's a lot in this report. There was consultation taken part, and unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, we had one objector who raised concerns around dust and safety issues and the like. But more importantly, the application was assessed against our Central Goldfields planning scheme, and it is considered appropriate to proceed when we put all the conditions on. And as I say, they are conditions that are outlined on pages 40 through to 47 in our report tonight. There are 56 conditions. There are many, many conditions, but it's important that the applicant does comply to get the best outcome for our community, but also for the development of Maryborough and the Central Goldfields Shire. So I'm happy to support the recommendations, and that's why I've moved them here tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Mrs. Douglas, do you wish to say anything on this one?
No, I'm fine with this one. Thank you.
Okay. So the recommendation for this item is on page 40 for anybody who's following our agenda. And I'm just going to acknowledge the fact that this is to approve the plan of subdivision as presented to us with the 56 conditions attached. Again, I'm not going to read them, so I'm going to put this to the vote. Those in favour say aye.
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 Against, as carried. Thank you very much for that. Okay, moving on to item 8.4, which is on page 48 of our agenda this evening.
And I'd like to move that council adopt the tree management plan.
Okay, do you have a second to that?
Yes, second, Mr. Chairman.
It's been moved and it's been seconded. Mrs. Douglas, do you wish to say anything in relation to this one?
Just a few comments. The plan is there for everybody to look at, but it's really, council has quite a lot of data about the trees in their shire and in their townships. This is not for the open land trees. This covers the trees that the council is really responsible for. And tree management has become, I think, front of mind for many councils because there's been some fairly tragic incidences. And our staff really have already been collecting quite a lot of data, but really we've not had a robust tree management plan. And I think that is a worry for our community, but it's also a worry for our staff and for our council. So this is really something I think we're all looking forward to seeing before we leave, really. And I'm pleased that it's come to this meeting tonight. I'll just really cover the executive summary, and I think you'll find that it's really going to make us all feel much more comfortable about the trees that we are responsible for. So it really has been developed in order to provide a clearly defined and consistent approach to the way Central Goldfields Shire Council manages tree assets and issues from an operational perspective, and assist Shire Council staff in determining priorities for tree programs and works, and to support and complement Council's focus on a greening approach and achieving some urban cooling. The plan really will provide principles and reference policies for how Central Goldfields Shire Council addresses. There's a list of them, including tree management, risk identification and mitigation, tree inspections and assessments, tree selection and planting, tree removal, tree protection, infrastructure protection, electric line clearance and tree maintenance. As I said, the policy is in the papers, and encourage people to have a look at that. But I'm really pleased that we actually are adopting this tonight.
Thank you very much, Mr. Douglas. Mr. Delahunty, did you have to make any comments on this one?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I'll just make a couple of observations. I am delighted that we have actually got to this point and can finalise this in very, even though it is fairly late in our term here. Interestingly, that when we first arrived here on some social media somewhere, I was sort of referred to as the tree hugging greenie, and it was certainly meant in a derogatory way. But yes, I don't consider myself a tree hugger or a greenie. I am a conservationist, certainly. But I think this is a very, very important step forward. There is no doubt, as many people will be aware, of some of the tragic consequences of incidents involving trees that have failed and lives have been lost in our state I think probably twice, in the last 2 or 3 years. Those are tragic situations and does expose council to a significant level of risk. And therefore the community to a significant level of risk. Now, this is not going to prevent those, but I think it is going to go a long way in terms of protecting our community, not only from those really unfortunate incidents, but also from the financial consequences of incidents that may occur with falling trees. It's an interesting trees are one of the issues that many people talk to us about. People love their trees or hate their trees, depending on their point of view. If you've got a tree that's dropping leaves and twigs into your gutter, you're probably not a great fan of that particular tree. But if we had a township without any trees, most people would choose to go and live somewhere else. And I absolutely understand that. So the management of our trees is fundamentally important because of the environmental impacts and the health benefits that trees provide to our community. And in terms of just the ambience and the livability of our shire is very much driven by our trees and our street trees. We are fortunate that we have some expertise on staff who are able to look after our trees, and we do. And our trees are well looked after. And I don't think anybody should be under the belief that our trees are neglected. However, this puts it in a very responsible framework so we can be absolutely accountable should any incidents occur, that we can actually know each and every tree, the risks that are presented to it, and the way that we manage each one of those. So I commend this to our meeting this evening. This is a very, very important step forward. So the motion is, or the recommendation that we're dealing with tonight is on page 50 of the agenda. It's quite a simple one, that council adopt the tree management plan. I'm going to put that to a vote. Those in favour say aye.
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 And against, that is carried. Thank you very much for that one. Moving on now to item 8.5, which is proposed road names of Page Street and Barbara Court. This report is on page 51 of the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move the recommendation which is on page 53 of tonight's report.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Mr. Delahunty. Do I have a seconder, please?
Yes, I'll second
Mr. Douglas. Mr. Delahunty, do you wish to speak to this one?
Just briefly, Mr. Chairman,
I knew you couldn't resist. I knew you couldn't resist for too long.
Well, the reality is this state has been developed over many years, because council previously issued a planning permit back in 2007. It was back in 2014 an amended planning application was created for an extension of the estate. But today we're dealing with some street names, because with the finalisation of the development of this estate, the developer is proposing to use the names Page Street, Barbara Court and Chisholm Street, which require approval from us as council. Interesting to note that Page Street, as is outlined in the report, is in recognition of W.M. Page, who was the Mayor of Maryborough in 1879 and was one of the 16 members of the Botanical Reserve Bowling Club and a president of the Maryborough Cycling Club in 1882. Also, Chisholm Street, it is proposed that it be a continuation of the existing street name, so we don't need to deal with that one too much. But the other street name is for Barbara Court. And this is in recognition of Sister Barbara, who was an active member of the community, according to the report that I'm reading and have read, is acknowledged for her time she gave to help many families who had ill loved ones, as well as her continuing support support to those families after their passing. So, as with any of these street names projects or naming rules have to be complied with according to the Office of Geographic Names. So, according to the report we've had and discussed this previously, the appropriate emergency services have been under consultation with them has been undertaken, and also we've found that there's been no duplications in relation to this. So I'm happy to support this application and happy to support the recommendation as outlined on page 53.
Okay, thank you very much. Mrs. Douglas, do you wish to make any comments?
No, I support.
Okay, so I'm going to put the motion. The motion is that council approve the road names for R1 on PS 803-204, 1 as Chisholm Street and Barbara Court, and the remaining section of the existing road reserve located in the southern section of the development as Page Street in Maryborough. So I'm going to put it to the vote. Those in favour, say aye.
Aye.
And against, that's carried. Who knows, Mr. Delahunty, in another 150 years from now, there might be a Delahunty Drive somewhere down in Talbot or something.
Never know.
Indeed. Okay, let's move on. We into some financial issues now. We're on page item 8.6. If you're following the agenda, this is on page 54 of the agenda this evening. As a report presented to us by the Chief Executive Officer, and the report has been presented to us.
And I'd like to move the council adopt the Strategic Resource Plan 2020-2021 to 2023-24.
So thank you for that. I couldn't find the recommendation. I found it now, which is on page 53. So thank you for that. It's been moved. To have a seconder, please.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Delahunty is moving. Mrs. Douglas, do you wish to make a comment on this one?
Would like to make a few comments, and this is the power of work actually that's gone into this preparing this strategic resource plan, and the purpose of it is to establish a financial framework over the next 4 years to ensure council's strategic objectives as expressed in its council plan, provide an assessment of the resources, financial and non-financial, required to accomplish the objectives and strategies included in the council plan, establish a basis to measure council's adherence to its policies and strategies, and assist council to comply with sound financial management principles in accordance with the Act, and to plan for the long-term financial sustainability of the municipality. So you can see it's a very pivotal piece of work for the Shire, for any council. Fortunately, we had part funding to do this work from LGB's past program. We were able to use a template, and the template actually was able to assist with benchmarking with other small rural councils. And it really was a very intensive work. It looked at our service planning right across the board, amazing amount of services the council are involved in. And looking forward, the planning process will involve reviewing alignment of current services with the community needs, internal review of levels of service for each of the service council is involved with, development of options to improve alignment and any changes to the level of services. So it sits with the annual plan, the council plan, and it just is really the support that there is required to deliver on those two important plans. So it fits in there across that whole of that strategic planning that the Shire is involved in. So I think it's a very important piece of work. I'm glad to see it on the agenda tonight.
Thank you very much for that. Mr. Delahunty, do you have any comments?
No.
Okay, I'll just make just a couple of observations before we put this to the vote. This is last month we mentioned that there are some very key documents that form the basis for council's planning, and this is certainly one of those critical documents that enables us to ensure that we meet the objectives, our financial objectives, that we make sure that the municipality remains a stable and sustainable organisation going forward. and it addresses in many ways the sort of financial risks of the council. While some of these documents are fairly dry and boring for those who find figures dry and boring, they are very, very important, and the importance of this document cannot be overstated. I am delighted that the report has included, at our request, a table on page 58, which clearly points out the financial objectives that we're setting for the council. These aren't numbers that are just dreamt up, and I wanted to make sure that it was very clear about where our objectives were coming from. What are the objectives that we are trying to achieve, and why? And I think this report clearly lays out that these have come from VAGO and clearly outline where we want to be as a council, and that is really important. It's very easy to understand, and I encourage anybody who may be reading this report to go and have a look at those and assess where we are as a council. We are in a very strong position, and I'm very proud of the fact that despite all the reforms and the changes that have occurred, we are in a very strong position, and a position that is getting better and is planned to get better in the coming years. So I commend this report to the council and acknowledge the work that's been put in by the CT Management Group and our Chief Executive and our Finance Department to get us to this particular point. This is a very, very important document that will ensure the sustainability of the Central Goldfields Shire into a long and prosperous future. So the recommendation is that council adopts the Strategic Resource Plan 2021 to 23-24. So I'm going to put it to the vote. Those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against, that's carried. Thank you very much for that one. Okay, moving on now to item 8.7, which is the progress report on our action plan as at the end of last financial year. Again, this one has been presented to us by the Chief Executive Officer, and again is a very, very important way by which we account to the community on the work that we've been doing, and where we've had success and where we haven't been quite as successful as we would like to have been when we started out the year. So it's a very comprehensive report, and the recommendation in relation to this matter is on page 61.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move the council notes the 2019-20 Action Plan Progress Report.
Okay, it has been moved. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second that.
It has been moved and seconded. Thank you. Do we wish to make any comments in relation to this?
Mr. Chairman,
I thought you might. Good, thank you.
This is a report card, but it was started back when we developed our action plan, which was adopted at our ordinary council meeting on the 25th of June last year. This is a fourth progress report on the action plan for the period up till the 30th of June this year. There's some 90 actions identified in the plan. Of these, 61 are completed, 22 are in progress, 6 are not progressing, and 1 is not due to start. As we do, and as administrators, we've been keenly following how we progress on these things. A couple I just like to mention. One was a development of a business case for the Youth Hub. It is in progress still, but unfortunately with COVID impacting on us, the Youth Hub was temporarily closed back in March. So there's a little bit of work to go on in that project. Another one I'd like to mention is the development of an economic development and tourism strategy. Now that's 100% completed, and we're already seeing some of the work being done by our staff, and we're commencing some of the identified actions in that plan. Another one I'd like to mention is the implementation of the Energy Breakthrough Business Plan. I've chaired the committee there, and unfortunately we won't be able to hold the event this year, but we're very grateful for the support of the $2 million given to us by the state government. So it's 80% done on the implementation of the business plan, but with that $2 million, there'll be a few little adjustments made. The other one, and I think it's important, we want to recognise, as we all do as administrators, is the work done by our Audit and Risk Committee. And part of that is the implementation of the report that comes out of that. The action plan picks up the actions coming from that Audit and Risk Committee. So we're progressing well on that. But as I said, there are many, many actions in this action plan, and I'm pleased to say that we're progressing well in all of those. I want to thank, though, the people who have been involved with developing it. Obviously, the community have been helping us develop that through the listening posts we've held. Many of those were held personal listening posts, but obviously we've done that by virtual television and the like in the last couple of months. But also, I want to highlight again, the report shows that we've made good progress up till the 30th of June. There's still a little bit of work to be done, but I think we should be proud of the work being done by our council involving our community in progressing this report. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mrs. Douglas, do you wish to say anything?
No, thank you.
Okay, I might just make a couple of observations. When we first arrived here, we actually did take some action to refresh the council plan and to reflect the circumstances that we came into, and we engaged the community in an extensive process of consultation whilst we did refresh the council plan. Out of the council plan, then of course, each year we develop our action plan for that year to implement the commitments that we made while we were developing the council plan. And I think this is a very, very exciting report. And I guess naturally you go straight and have a look at the red dots to see where we didn't quite hit the mark or where we failed miserably. I can say we hadn't failed miserably in any of those. We actually have done remarkably well. And if you read the comments, there are some very good reasons why some of those, I think there's only 5 red dots while they are there, and the explanation is very clear. Of course, we should go looking at the successes first, I guess would be the sensible thing to do, because there are a huge number of successes. And I'm very proud of the fact that despite all the difficulties that the team has encountered over the last 12 months, and there has been plenty, we have achieved a vast majority of green dots, which indicate that we have achieved exactly what we committed to the community that we'll be trying to achieve. So Madam CEO, CEO, could you please take back to the team our appreciation for the extraordinary amount of work that has been undertaken in this past year.
Yeah.
It is fantastic to see that array of green dots, and we want to congratulate the entire team on that amazing achievement, and congratulations to all concerned. And I think our community should be very pleased that we've actually met the targets that we set with their assistance. Of course, the incoming council will take responsibility for establishing its council plan in the first 6 months of their term, and that will then set in train and processes whereby the new council will set its annual plans in place. And I'm confident that the precedent has been set, and I think we will find that the incoming council will be making as many green dots as we've been able to. So could you please take back our congratulations to the entire team for an amazing job. Well done. I'm going to put to the vote. The council notes the 2019-20 action plan progress report for 2019-2020. Those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against?
Aye.
That's carried. Thank you very much for that one. All right. Moving on to item 8.8. Have I got the right one here? Yep. Yes, I have. 8.8 on page 62 of the agenda. This is a report from our Manager of Governance, Property and Risk, and in relation to our governance rules going forward.
I'll move that Council adopt the governance rules.
Thank you. The recommendation is on page 65. Okay, it's been moved. Have a seconder. It's been seconded, Mr. Delahunty. Mrs. Douglas, do you wish to make any comments on this one?
Well, the governance rules really are just taking over from our own local laws. These are all obviously come under the new Local Government Act of 2020. And so there is a procedure. We've just had to actually add a few extra items that we had placed in other areas that we were already aware of. So it's just wrapped up their set of governance rules. I've read here in the report, and I don't quite know, we need to emphasise that a council must comply with its governance rules. And I was surprised to read that, because I would have thought a councillor would, of course, expect to have to comply with their own rules, but maybe not. And of course, this has now, under the Act, to be adopted before the 1st of September. So well done to our staff to have this ready. We're just there in the nick of time, It has been on display. It's complied with everything that we need to do in bringing it to this stage, and it's all there for everybody to read if they're interested. So happy that to support this particular set of governance rules.
Thank you very much. Mr. Delhunter, you wish to make any comments?
No.
Okay, I just made the observation, picking up on what you just said there, Mrs. Douglas. It's extraordinary. On my many years sitting on councillor conduct panels, 9 times out of 10, the problems that we were dealing with were because councils failed to observe their governance rules. They are there for a very good reason, and they are a very, very useful document when they're used appropriately. And of course, that's when councils get into trouble, when they ignore their own rules. So we'll certainly be encouraging, I'm sure, any incoming council to abide by the rules that have been adopted here this evening, as we have attempted to do. Not always perfectly, but we certainly attempt to. So the motion is on page 65, is that council adopt the governance rules have been presented this evening. Those in favour say aye.
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 Again, that's carried. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 8.9, which is our public transparency policy. Again, this is a report that's been prepared for us by the Manager of Governance, Property and Risk.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move that council adopt the public transparency policy.
Okay, thank you for that.
Second.
Your seconder, yes, it's been moved. It's been moved a second. Mr. Delhunter, do you wish to make any comments on this one?
A couple of quick comments, Mr.
Yep.
Chairman. This again comes about because of changes to, or the new Local Government Act, which was adopted in State Parliament earlier this year. And again, this is one that has to be complied with by this council by the 1st of September this year. So it's interesting to know that this has been developed using a template from Maddox, which are our local government lawyers, and also a Local Government Victoria template regarding public transparency policy. So it was put out for consultation. It was reviewed by the Council's Audit and Risk Committee. And again, it is the things that will be in this, in the transparency things will be able to be sourced are things like the council plan, the municipal health and wellbeing plan, local laws, procurement policy, and importantly, the council code of conduct. So again, we are complying with state laws, and I'm pleased to support this recommendation tonight.
So thank you, Mrs. Douglas.
The only comment I will make is many of these things, as everybody will be aware of, they're all due in at the 1st of September 2020, and it's in accordance with this new act. And it's been a real, this is a substantial amount of work that has to be undertaken. And I really do congratulate the staff, because we are really able to get these policies or strategies in by the required date. But I think it has really meant a lot of extra work for probably particularly the small councils. So well done to our staff here.
Here.
Thank you. Yes, I absolutely agree with that one. I just have a question of the CEO, and it may not be a fair question, but it's just an intriguing one, that the implications of not having this matter dealt with and adopted by the 1st of September, what are the implications of that? What does that actually mean if it's not done?
Through the chair, actually, I can't answer that. I'm not sure if there's any significant ramifications, but it's a breach of the Local Government Act, I suppose I can say that.
I guess, yeah, I didn't really expect you to be able to explain much more than that. It's just as interesting, because I was actually reading this morning, there is a council who has decided to defer this matter for the incoming council to deal with. I thought that was an interesting move. Okay, we won't be distracted by that. We'll move on. The recommendation is there for us on page 68, is that council adopt the public transparency policy. So those in favour of the motion, say aye.
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 Against, that's carried. Thank you very much for that one. Moving then on to item 8.10. Here we go. Yes, 8.10, which is the draft expenses and support for councils and members of delegated committees policy. It's another good name, isn't it? I wonder what that shortens down to. We won't go there. The motion in relation to this matter is on page 71.
And I'd like to move the council adopt the expenses and support for councillors and members of delegated committees policy.
Thank you. It's been moved. Have a second, Mr. Delahunty.
Yes, Mr.
Indeed.
Chairman. I'll
Thank
second that.
you. Mrs. Douglas, do you wish to make any comments on this one?
Again, this is another one that's part of this having everything prepared by the 1st of September, I think. Well, anyway, it's due to the Act. There has been, of course, there has been support for expenses for councillors and members of delegated committees policy in the past. And this is another one where we've had to update an existing policy to comply with the new Act. That's pretty much all I think needs to be said.
Okay, thank you very much. And I just have received a message from our manager of governance and risk, who is monitoring this evening's meeting, and she tells me there is, in fact, there is actually no penalties in that section of the Act. It would be a breach of the Act, as our CEO mentioned. So there we go, just for everybody's information. So the motion has been put that we just find it. I can't find it. It doesn't matter. You've got it there. On page, where are we up to? Page 71. Council adopt. Yes, here it is. The motion is that council adopts the expenses and support for councillors and members of delegated committees policy. Been moved and seconded. I'm going to put it to the vote. Those in favour say aye.
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 Against, that's carried. Thank you very much for that one. Item 8.11, which is the updated of our instrument of delegation to council staff. By council to staff. I should get that right. That's important.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move the recommendation which is outlined on page 73 of tonight's report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Delahunty. Mrs. Douglas, do you wish to second that?
I'll second that.
Okay,
Yes.
it's been moved and seconded. Mr. Delahunty, you wish to make any comments?
Mr. Chairman, look, this again is one of those things that have to be done by the 1st of September to comply with the Local Government Act. And like other administrators, I'd like to thank the Manager of Governance and Property and Risk, Megan Kruger, for her fantastic work she's done getting all this prepared. We've been talking about these things for the last couple of months, but to now have the final document is very important. But as we said, it's we need to comply with the Local Government Act, and we have to do that by the 1st of September. Again, the instrument of delegation and appointment of, and authorisations are prepared by council by our lawyers, Maddox lawyers. So again, this has gone through a proper process. So I'm very happy to support the recommendation which is outlined on page 73 of tonight's agenda. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Douglas, do you wish to make any comments?
No, thank you.
Okay, so the motion is that in the exercise of the powers conferred by legislation referred to in the attached instrument of delegation, the Central Goldfields Shire Council resolve that, one, there be delegated to the members of council staff holding, acting in or performing the duties of the officers or positions referred to in the attached instrument of delegation to members of council staff, the powers, duties and functions set out in that instrument, subject to the conditions and limitations specified in that instrument. 2, the instrument comes into force immediately council adopts the resolution, so that is this evening. On coming into force of the coming into force of the instrument, all previous delegations by council to members of council staff other than the Chief Executive Officer are revoked. And 4, the duties and functions set out in the instrument must be performed, and the powers set out in the instrument must be executed in accordance with any guidelines or policies of council that may from time to time be adopted. That has been moved and seconded, so I'm going to put the motion. Those in favour say aye.
Aye.
That's against, so that is carried. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 12, which is the final substantive matter on our agenda this evening, which is on page 74 of your agenda. And the recommendation is on page 76. Yes.
And I'll move the Council One note that the special council meeting on the 22nd of September 2020 is no longer required. To reschedule the statutory council meeting from the 10th of November 2020 to the 17th of November 2020, and reschedule the council meeting scheduled for the 24th of November 2020 to the 1st of December 2020.
Okay, thank you very much. Is seconded, please, Mr. Delahanty?
Happy to second that, Mr. Chairman.
Been moved and seconded. Mrs. Douglas, did you want to make any comments on this one?
Well, it's a little bit messy in a sense, but it's through no fault of our own, really. It's two reasons. One is our, obviously, it's as it says in the motion, that it's been affected by the statutory meeting dates, and also because of our external audit. So the external audits have been rescheduled, and they just don't align with that first meeting, special meeting date. So that was the reason behind that one. And then the statutory meeting, which was set for the 10th, following the council elections, has also now really been updated. That means that the whole process may not be finalised by then, and so we need to move that one to take into account the new date set by the Victorian Electoral Commission. So I think there's no other option but to reschedule. I mean, it's not something you do lightly, but it's no use having meetings when we haven't got the information, or things may still be under consideration. So don't think we've got much option other than to reschedule.
Indeed, you're right. Mr. Delahanty, you're making the comments?
A quick couple of comments, Mr. Chairman. This, when I do this report, this highlights that we haven't got too much time to go, and that's in a lot of ways disappointing, particularly with COVID impacting on our involvement, personal involvement with the community. So again, as Administrator Douglas has said, this has come about because of changes to the Victorian Electoral Commission dates. I want to highlight that nominations open for councillors that need to do the mandatory training, that the nominations open on the 17th of September. I've got this off the VEC website. They close on the 22nd of September. The postal voting will close on the 23rd of October. The election day, as we all know, is on the 24th of October. But importantly, as the VEC website shows, the results will be declared by the 13th of November. So again, that's really forced our hand in relation to the council meeting dates. So I'm happy to support the motion as outlined by Administrator Douglas.
Thank you very much. It looks like I'll have to cancel that holiday I had booked for the 12th of November. Only joking. You can't go anywhere, of course. Okay.
No, you can't.
It has been moved and seconded. The council note the special council meeting on the 22nd of September is no longer required. Reschedule the statutory council meeting from the 10th of November to the 17th of November 2020, and reschedule the council meeting scheduled for the 24th of November 2020 to the 1st of December 2020. It's been moved and seconded. I'm going to put it to the vote. Those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against, that is carried. So then moving on then to item 9, which is the use of the common seal. There are no matters there. That we don't have any notices of motion to consider this evening. We have no urgent business to consider, nor any confidential business. So that brings me to the end of our meeting this evening, and I'm going to declare the meeting closed at 6:56 p.m. I thank all members of the public who have been attending this evening and joining us via our live stream. And if you wish to go back and view any parts of the meeting, they are recorded and will be available on Council's website, I think, as from tomorrow afternoon. I think they go online. So encourage anybody to access the council meeting. I thank you all for your attendance and wish you all good night.
Good night.